I'm going to run the numbers here, and I'm going to have Adam do the math with us here. So everybody who's listening here, grab a pen and paper, pause it, do whatever you got to do, write this stuff down. Get involved in the math here because it's very surprising to see the sum. So we're going to start with some baselines. $100,000 purchase price, 20% down, a 1% rent to value ratio with a 30-year fixed mortgage, $200 a month in cash flow. And I think that's all the baselines we're going to go off of there, right? So does that sound like an unreasonable deal to you?
That sounds like the deal that would be my low end of what I'd be happy with.
Yeah, so, yeah. I mean, not a lot of people get happy about $200 a month cash flow, right? Their cash on cash return is not so sexy. Well, I'd like to tell people cash on cash return is made up crap anyway, right? It's a great metric to fly by real fast and see if it looks good just to stop and look at it, but that's like the smallest end of the deal anyway. So now we're going to get into this. So let's say just for baseline value in the deal, right? You financed 80%. What's 80% of 100,000?
Last I checked, still 80,000, right?
80,000. So that means you invested how much?
20,000.
So 20,000 is your investment. If you did your job as the CEO of your real estate investment business, right? You got Zach and team to work with you on one side of it, plus the right people on the ground to source, acquire, rehab, manage, and maintain your business. And you've got people in there for the majority of the time you own it. Who pays off the 80,000?
Your tenant.
Mm-hmm. The tenants, right? So if the tenant's going to pay it off, it's going to take them 30 years. So let's take 80,000 and divide that by 30 and tell me what number you get.
You get, I believe, 2 2/3, right?
What's the exact dollar amount? I have yet to ever pay my bill with 2 2/3 dollars.
Fine. $2,666.67.
Precisely. Thank you. So $2,666.67. If you divide that, so that's how much every year, averaged over 30 years, they're basically giving you because they're paying off that note. So if you divide that into the 20,000, I won't beat you up with this math, Matt. I don't know why that came out, Adam. So you actually kind of do look like my buddy Matt, which is actually a good thing. The guy is he's an operator for the Navy, and
he's
you know what those guys are. So you definitely want to know. So
he's a male model.
If he told me he was a male model, I wouldn't believe him.
So it is if you divide that into the 20,000, that means your 20,000 is actually growing by 13.33% of the original 20,000. Every single year you have somebody in there just paying off the balance. That's not cash flows. That's not appreciation. That's nothing else. That's not tax benefits. That's not even hedge against inflation. All right. So now we know that there's a 13.33% gain there. Now let's take a look at where inflation comes in. Now we get to raise rents because of inflation, right? Do you guys know what the average rent is going up by right now in the United States?
Oh, yeah. We talked about it in a previous episode. It's right now nationwide, it's like 12 or 13%, I think.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. 12 or 13% across the country. I mean, there are places that's not going up that high. In fact, if you go over to, I think it's Minneapolis, Minnesota, it's going down by between 15 and 17. And if you don't understand why it's going down in Minneapolis, Minnesota, go back and look at the last year. You know, when you don't have cops running around there to help you out, you're not going to want to have a really good rental environment. So that's what we're dealing with. So there are a few places where it's going down. So let's just say in your environment, you only raised it 3%. We're going to go off of 3. We're going to use that number in this particular example. So we have a 1% rent to value ratio, and you're making $200 a month off that, right?
Yep.
So that means $1,000 a month rent. You're making $200 a month. Year 2, you're going to raise it 3%. What is 3% of 1,000?
$30.
$30. Nothing sexy. So $30 went up. That means conceivably, depending upon taxes and insurance, we're just going to keep it simple. Your cash flow could have gone up to by $30. So it's down to $230 a month in cash flow, right? Yep. So reasonable. You went first year is $1,000 a month, $200 cash flow. Year 2, $1,030 with $230 cash flow. If you run those numbers, that $30 increases your cash flow by 15%. That is a year-over-year gain in your cash flow. Every time you raise it 3% or more, you get a 15% gain on your cash flow. It becomes extremely sexy. And we know it's going up higher than that. 5, 6, 7, 8% year-over-year increases in rent is not unheard of right now. So that right there is huge. Now, where it gets really awesome, does the lender get to raise the payment on the loan because of inflation?
Nope.
No.
Well,
they're going to hit you. I'm right now running the numbers at 4.25% Let's just say it's 4.25. I can't say that's going to be your interest rate. It could be lower, it could be higher. Each person's different, right? 4.25% is going to have a $393.55 payment every month for 30 years. That's the principal and interest. So that means you're going to pay $80,000 principal. That means you're going to pay $61,678.69 in interest, right? So when you add those together, it's $141,678.69. People are like, man, I got to pay off that really fast so I don't pay all that interest. Hold off. Don't think that way. So we said inflation's about 5.5%. Let's just call it 5 for right now. Let's just say it's 5%. At 5% inflation, their dollar is devaluing by 5% per year, right? The buying power of the dollar. So if you recalculate every dollar as you make that payment of $393.55 for the next 360 months, as you're raising rents, you will see that the sum of all those dollars, when you compare them to the value of the dollar the day you bought the property to the day you pay it off, you didn't pay $80,000. You didn't pay the $61,678 total, right? For a total of $141,678. Your total dollars paid is $73,311.49. That's what you paid. You paid less than what you borrowed. That's why they want you to refi. Because if you stay in the deal long enough, you play the tortoise game, you end up taking from them more than what they gave you. So leverage high, you leverage long, you pay off slow, and get somebody else to pay it back and give you a premium every year.
Yeah, that's exactly. I haven't paid. If you look at my investments, I personally have never paid a single cent of interest.
Precisely. And then you wrote it off as if you did. That's the other sexy part of it. And then you got to depreciate the property, and then the property went up in value significantly. I mean, guys, I can go on for days about the hundreds of % return and how short-sighted it is when a person gets so caught up on cash return and cap rate. Great metrics. Don't get me wrong, but pro forma is Greek for bullshit. It's not real yet because they're guessing at it. Now, pro formas have to be close, but just know it's thousands of % return when you see through the real depth of this. If we took the real rate of inflation today of around 12%, you know what you'd be paying in total value over 30 years at 12% inflation? $38,260. You're paying less than what you borrowed.
Well, I think that this is deep stuff, but it's important and it's crucial to understand in your overall financial plan long term. But I think why people look, especially the newer investor, they're focused on pro formas is because they just don't have a deep understanding of the true benefit of using leverage. We have some people that they have cash or whatever the case is, they're doing 1031. They want to just buy in cash and hold it. But, leveraging does so much for you in the capacity that we just talked about. And I appreciate you breaking it down, Aaron, to that exact amount, but also, just the ability to expand your portfolio and expedite this. Because that was one individual house that we talked about. Think about if you multiply that by 5 or 10 over time, and in my opinion, when you're talking about inflation, real estate is an excellent tool to mitigate your exposure to inflation, and inflation can work for you, like we talked about with appreciation and rent raises over time. But even a more powerful tool above real estate that allows you to mitigate your exposure to inflation is debt, is leverage. And then you couple those two together, now you're playing the system right.